So here's a quick tour of my shop. Someone was interested in it, and that's one more person being interested in it than I ever thought there would ever be. So this used to be a butler's pantry in our house, and my wife said that I could convert it into something that I thought would be fun. It is 8 foot by 7 feet. The first thing I did in here was build this workbench. Everything in here is built out of scrap wood, with the exception of that bench vise, which I bought. I didn't make the metal out of on my own. So the bench is just built into the walls there, attached to the windowsill. I made the frame out of cast off 2x4s and 2x6s. I think you can see here that's a 2x6 that was ripped lengthwise. And then the plywood here is 2 half-inch plywood layers and then a 1/4-inch layer. The plywood was actually taken, I actually got that plywood for my wedding. My wife and I got married in the backyard, and I went to Lowe's and bought some of the 4x8 plywood sheets that they use to separate shipments on trucks for I think $1 a piece, so I could lay them out in the yard and then cover them in a sheet, a runner, and the girls would have something solid to stand in, a solid aisle that their heels wouldn't sink into. And then I'm not really sure where this came from, but it was in my shed back in the backyard. Having made this, I'm not sure if I would do it the same way again. When I put it together, the screws caused the plywood to sink a little bit around the screw. So I ended up filling those depressions in a little bit with epoxy if they were small. There were some places where I used wood filler to make something resembling a level surface. It's okay. I learned a lot from doing it, and I wouldn't do it this way again when I do it again, but it works well enough. One thing that is kind of annoying is that because the plywood layers are not actually attached to each other, they're just stacked, it is kind of springy, which can be annoying whenever I want to hammer something delicately or really do anything. But, it's all right. It's worth what it cost me. Put the bench vise in, which was really handy, and added these bench dogs. I've got one here, so I can, oops, that's kind of loose, but I can have some stock secured pretty well, and I can also get it out of there and then have the bench dogs retract. Just drilled some holes in here for these proper bench dogs. These were just made from little cabinet holders. You can just salvage those from from some cabinets that people toss on the side of the road. I intended to do more, and I just never got around to doing it, really because I didn't need to. I did drill a hole in the side here for this little retractable bench dog on a string so that I don't lose it. This was for when I worked on my plane up there, and I needed a way, and it's handy for other things as well, but it's handy to have something clamped in the vise and then supported this far out. I had every intention to use this little mark there, and there are a couple of other light pencil marks that I'm sure you can't, well, maybe you can see that one and that. Anyway, those are at specific heights. I had every intention of drilling additional holes down this leg here so that I could support things at various heights. And I'm probably not ever going to follow through with that, mainly because I don't think I'm going to have a need for that feature before I end up tearing this whole thing apart, because we're going to move in a couple of months. I did cut some notches out. This notch right here is specifically for my universal vise. This opens about that much, so I can clamp it on there and then screw the bench vise all the way in, and I can have a universal vise to work on some stuff. These are because I had clamp of sizes and wanted to be able to put a clamp on my bench and also clamp the stock. It was good for stuff like, a vise like this size, to be able to clamp like that. If I were doing it again, or I guess when I do it again, I'll probably end up cutting a channel somewhere in the vise so I can just stick a clamp in like that and then turn it. Lessons learned. Here's some crap that I worked on. This is actually a really useful thing. I don't have a drill press in here, and I don't actually have a drill press at all. And whenever I need to drill at a precise angle, it's nice to have this as a guide. I used it to drill these holes here, and they turned out all right. It lives usually in one of these cabinets up here. These were already existing when I moved in. I've got some other tools up here that I use less often. They need less frequent access to. Big into vertical storage, using the walls as much as possible. So I've got various crap there, and epoxies and glues and other junk there. Screwdrivers, pliers, wrenches. There's some primarily measuring things, but not exclusively. Some other stuff over here. I really like the magnets. It's just easy to put things on there and then grab them. Easy to see them. They hold them really well. Even holds the jack plane here. So, yeah. I've got everything. I've got the lights wired on a power strip so that I could avoid wiring in a new light switch. I've also got hooked into the same power strip as the lights my air purifier, which was really handy addition. It's got 3 settings. Usually it's keep it on setting number 1, but I'm doing something that's going to produce a lot of dust. I can turn it up a little bit. Added this cardboard flap because the exhaust was coming out this direction and the intake is right there. I was worried those were going to interfere with each other. So put the little strip on there, the little cardboard flap on there, so it would direct the air, the exhaust to that direction. Intake would come in that direction, and I was hoping it would create some sort of a circulation. It is a lot more tolerable to be in here for a long period of time, especially with these warm lights on me all the time. Once I added that, so yeah, that's a useful thing, especially since I covered up the air conditioner register. It's under this foam behind that leg there. Here's another useful thing. My air compressor obviously is right there, and I wanted a little cubby for it, but I wanted to be able to access the air compressor, and it has controls on the top. So the obvious solution is just to make a shelf that's only what it needs to be. So this matters, and then there's one in, actually, none of these are even one in the back. But this way I can still access gauges, I can control how much pressure is going to the tool, I can still access the line out there. And the supports here are just wide enough for my shop vac to sit with the wheels on the outside. So it sits a little bit lower, I get a little bit of vertical height back, and also it keeps this pretty secure. But like I said, you can imagine it doesn't see a whole lot of you don't get any earthquakes here. So being secure isn't that big of a deal, but it is a big deal for it to sit a little bit lower and get some vertical height back, especially when I want to turn it on. Again, vertical storage is pretty important to me, so making sure these are batteries for my lawn equipment, making sure that I can keep them on the wall whenever I need them. I can access them pretty easily. Also, these things are pretty easy to take apart, so I can just undo that. I had every intention to put some wing nuts on there, but I don't really move these that much. Here's some more, just a shelf. Pretty essential piece of equipment here is a little vacuum, just for small things. These are really handy. I'm glad I made these. About to sneeze. Excuse me. So these are actually really handy. I've got some tools here. They're just held on by gravity. You see with my jigsaw, little ledge right here, and then there's a little overhang. So the tool goes under that overhang and then slides onto the to the ledge. And since the tool wants to fall that direction, that ledge has been sufficient to hold both of these tools for years. And then I've got a little simple thing for my angle grinder. It's not really all that important, or not all that impressive. Stuff going up here. But yeah, it's a modest space, but it does pretty much the things that I want it to do. And I've learned a lot about how to maximize my my available real estate. And the next bench that I build in the next workshop that I have is going to be, I think, a whole lot better because of the lessons that I learned from having this for the past I think 3 or 4 years. So anyway, hope this was instructive, or at least interesting. And if it was neither, then hopefully you saw something and immediately thought, I'm never going to do that. So, I'm happy to just be that much of an influence of what not to do. All right, thanks for stopping by.